Hey guys, welcome to the Comic Den. I'm your host Ace Knuckles, and today we're going to do some monthly reads. I've got a giant stack. I kind of got behind on my reading, so I just piled through a bunch of it, and I think this may kind of also mesh together with what are we in May? This might also mesh in. We're in June. This might be May's as well. Sorry, it's been a long week. Just got done with my first official Comic-Con over the weekend. It was an awesome experience for me. We sold 9 more comics. I'm gonna go up to the comic store today and see if I can get them to buy a few more. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Made some new friends, made some new connections. Really got the name out for Comic Den, for Magnus, for Legit Arts. So I think it was a pretty positive experience, and I can't wait to do Air Capital coming up in November. But yeah, let's jump in. So again, for those of you who are just tuning in, these are all going to be in alphabetical order, not in any sort of order of how much I liked it or disliked it. I read a lot in a month, so bear with me. This could be a 30-40 minute video. First, we're going to start off with Aquaman. So this was a very satisfying story, and this is kind of the close of it. This new story arc with the new creative team, the new artist, the new writer, and I was very, very hesitant at first whenever I started reading it. I don't like change. I'm like most comic book people. I can handle a little bit of change, but if I'm really into a story, I don't mind you changing things around. Like whenever everybody freaked out over Captain America being Hydra Cap, I didn't mind that. I thought it was a good story because you also know that it's going to go back to normal. Captain America's not going to be evil forever. But whenever you change a creative team in the middle of, me reading it, I guess, and for all intents and purposes, that other story was done. It wasn't going anywhere. They had done what they needed to do. They had done what they planned to do. It's not like they said, nope, you're done, and we need a new team. So I think it was planned, but it's still hard for me, and I always go into those comics with a little apprehension. I don't quite feel comfortable changing teams, and I don't know why, but DC has kind of changed their look. So they went with less glossy paper, so it's almost in between like new comics where it's all like high gloss, super shiny, and the old school almost newspaper feel. So it's kind of an in between on that in the pages, and I don't know if that's to save money or if they're going for a specific look, but kind of the art has gone that way too, where they want these ultra detailed, stylized images. And you see this in, Aquaman. We see this in The Flash was a big one. The Flash, I wasn't a huge fan of the art. I loved the art for the first few runs, the first few volumes of The Flash Rebirth and moving into the DC universe. But not too stoked about it. Luckily, the story's good and it's been carrying it, but yeah, it's just something weird that I do. That is, some things bug me, some things don't. All right, next we have the Avengers. Oh, there you go. And this is kicking into the War of Realms, which the Avengers has been kind of cool because this one you don't see the Avengers in it at all. It's talking about the Squadron Supreme, and it also ends with a pretty big bombshell at the end. I'm not going to give it away. But yeah, the Avengers has seemed to be kind of doing that. And I don't know if it's a Jason Aaron thing or what, but he also did it in Thor leading up to the War of Realms, which I thought was amazing as well, because the War of Realms is such a big story and there's so many different components. Like this group is fighting over here and this group is fighting over here and this group's fighting over here. That it needed to be set up. And I wouldn't be surprised if doing this also boosted sales of all the tie-ins, because you have, like Spider-Man ties into it, but you don't necessarily have to read the Spider-Man one. But Spider-Man is also on a team that gets its own little 3-issue tie-in. And those little 3-issue tie-ins have been pretty good. I was a little skeptical at first, but yeah, they're pretty good, and I don't think I would have bought into it as much if during the lead up in Thor and the Avengers, if Jason Aaron hadn't have kind of done a little spotlight on each one of these little teams. So yeah, I mean, maybe they're also building up to a Squadron Supreme. I know Jason Aaron is leaving Thor here before too long. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are. I don't think it's not after War of Realms. I think he's got another run that he's going to do, and that's going to tie it all up. I'm assuming he's going to keep doing Avengers, and who knows what else he's going to do. I don't know if he's going to pick up another title from Marvel or if he's just going to keep doing his independent thing, because he's also knocking stuff out for Image. So yeah, I guess we'll see. Next, we have kind of a callback. We have the New Avengers, and this is Jonathan Hickman's run. This has been fantastic. I've been wanting to read the lead up to Secret Wars, and I never really knew where to start. So I finally went and did a little research on Comics Explained. Go check them out if you haven't yet. It's a great place where if you don't understand a story, you can watch Rob do, 20, 25-minute video. Sometimes it's less. And he'll give you the whole rundown on an entire series, on an entire character. He also does updates on like big events. So he'll do War of Realms, and he'll do that issue by issue. And then other times he goes back and he'll do it by trade. So it's really a great place if you just need some quick information, if you want some entertaining information. It's really what got me back into comics, is going to the comic book store, picking up a couple of titles, not really understanding what's going on because they weren't necessarily the very beginning or the origin. It was just a character that I used to know and I had a little bit of background. But going on to his channel and then watching and just consuming as much information about comics as possible, it really set me up to where now I'm all in. I can just about tell you anything you need to know about what's going on now and why it's important. I don't have the historical knowledge that he does, but I have enough to understand why what's happening now is important, which is really cool because I enjoy talking to people about comics. People know I like comics, and so when they ask me a question, I like having that answer. It also gives me a little credibility whenever I'm writing comics and trying to get people to buy my comic. Next, we have a big stack coming. Let's see here. Hold on. Almost done. I kind of do these all in clusters. You can see it's a nice big stack. But it's Batman. Batman is probably the most purchased item on my pull list. So we had Batman 68, Batman 69, Batman 70, and we'll kind of pause there and we'll talk about Detective Comics next. So 68, 69, 70, these are all the wrap-ups to this Nightmare volume that Tom King had. And, I have loved just about every single issue that Tom King has written in these 70 issues. I know some people are like, oh, it's hit and miss for me, or some people hate it. People really got turned off by this Nightmare sequence, and it was a little confusing at first because it seemed like individual stories that didn't connect, but then crazy stuff was happening, and you don't really get an explanation until towards the end. And so if you just pick it up and you don't listen to the blogs and you don't go on YouTube and you don't do any research, if you were just picking it up for the first time, you'd be absolutely confused. But Tom King is writing this as, I believe it was going to be 105 issues. He's writing this as a novel. That's how it's probably going to be best read, is if you read it all at once. And again, I kind of like that long game. Think of Jason Aaron's run. I really love Jason Aaron's run on Thor, and that goes back, almost 100 issues, 112? I don't know the exact number, but it's an enormous run that spans years and years and years and years. And so whenever you have something that huge, there will be spots that seem like lulls. But what I found, especially with Tom King's writing, is those spots that seem like lulls are going to end up being hugely important later on. So there's a rumor that they're cutting him off at 85, I believe, which really makes me sad because this story has been building and building and building, and I can finally see all of the pieces coming together, and I can finally get an idea of what's going to happen and how this final thing is going to go down. And it's got me super excited, but then I hear that they're cutting him off. And if they cut him off, I mean, that's 105 issues down to 85. I mean, you've taken him down 20 issues. 20 issues. That's 3 trades and some annuals. I mean, that's insane. It really does upset me. But good news is I've heard he's just going to continue the storyline in a Batman and Catwoman story. So, I mean, maybe I stop picking this up and go over there and do that. I don't know. It kind of depends on who the creative team's going to be. I've heard Bendis might pick it up. I've heard a couple other names thrown around. Honestly, if Bendis picked it up, I don't know if Bendis' writing really lends itself to Batman. But we'll see. I mean, obviously I'm going to give it a try. It's Batman. It's Bendis. Bendis is real hit and miss. Sometimes he likes to go crazy with the story and then not really have a direction to take it in. But then sometimes he can write really good stuff. Everybody knows his name for a reason. Whether you love him or hate him, it's because he makes waves. Next, we have a lot of Detective Comics. So, we've got 1001, 1002. These variant covers that have come out are just phenomenal. We've got 1003, and we've got 1004. And so these kind of deal with the Arkham Knight and who the Arkham Knight is. Now, I don't know. I'd have to go back and reread. I don't know if the original Arkham Knight is in continuity or if that's an Elseworld thing. Because this person is the Arkham Knight, but it's not the Arkham Knight from the Arkham Knight story. So, again, I haven't done a whole lot of research on it. I just picked it up because I love the Arkham Knight. But this is not the Arkham Knight if you're one of the fans that read the Arkham Knight that came out a few years ago. And in the story, they act like they don't know who this person is, so they've never encountered this villain. They've never encountered this person. They never make reference to the other Arkham Knight, which leads me to believe that they're saying the other Arkham Knight is not in continuity. And again, it has been years. Probably, I think I read it whenever it first came out in trade. And I've read a lot of stuff in between. It's been a while. And that was a time when I was just plowing through comics because I wanted to have comics and I wanted to read comics. And I haven't picked it up again. So bear with me. If I have gaps in my reasoning, feel free to let me know in the comments. Fill me in. Let me know who the original Arkham Knight was. I think I have an idea, but I don't want to say it out loud because then I might look like an idiot. But yeah, feel free to tell me in the comments who the original Arkham Knight was. Please don't spoil who this Arkham Knight is. But yeah, let's all play nice. So, next. I was irrationally excited about this. I love the Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle team ups. I also love James Tynion as a writer, and I also love Freddie Williams as an artist. He does a lot of, it seems like he almost exclusively does like mashups. And so you can kind of see he has a very unique art style. I absolutely love it, and if I ever save up enough money, then I'm buying an original piece from him. But I haven't. I've never had that much money on me. But yeah, I love this story, and I love the direction they're taking. It's a little jarring at first, but by the end of the first issue, not even by the end, by about the middle of the first issue, you understand what's going on. The story on this one seems far more developed than the first two. The first one was just like, oops, we accidentally found each other. The second one was, oh, one of my bad guys is after your bad guys. And this one is completely different than that so far, at least from what I can see. And I'm really excited to see where this story goes. Like I said, these crossovers have probably been some of my favorite crossovers that I've ever read. It's just amazing how well these groups of characters go together. Next, we have The Batman Who Laughs number 4, The Batman Who Laughs number 5. These stories have been phenomenal. It's so funny because we all know the Joker is insane. We all know the Joker is Batman's number one enemy. But the Batman Who Laughs is really, really trying to take that spot. And the funny thing is, it's almost Snyder calling out Batman for what it has been. Batman can beat anybody with prep time, right? There's nobody that can beat Batman if Batman's given enough prep time. And what always happens is Batman goes in, he gets in a situation, and then it looks like all is lost. But then that's what Batman wanted to happen, because then Batman has all these contingencies in place so that the plan was for him to get captured and for him to... so a great example was at the very beginning of Batman Rebirth in the I Am Bane story. Or it could be I Am Suicide story. But Batman goes to Santa Prisca and he fights Bane, gets captured, Bane cracks his back again, and then he's thrown into a cell. And you're like, oh man, Batman's plan's kind of going to crap. Turns out Batman wanted that to happen. He planned for that to happen. So that's what always happens with Batman. Now, the thing is, in this story, the same thing happens except for the Batman Who Laughs. So the Batman Who Laughs gets shot. Well, he was supposed to get shot. Or this happens. Well, that was supposed to happen. Batman stops this from happening. Well, that was supposed to be stopped from happening because then this happens. So it's one of those things where Batman's kind of getting a taste of his own medicine. And it's really interesting to see Batman scramble. Batman is panicking for the first time. Batman's having all of these issues. He can't handle what's going on. And on top of that, he's also got this new Joker toxin running through him. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting next 2 issues, and I can't wait to read those. Next, we have... Oh, there we go. Vader, Dark Visions. So I thought this was going to be an ongoing series, mostly because, again, I didn't do any research on it. So whenever I picked up issue 2 and it had nothing to do with issue 1, at first it threw me off. But it's an anthology, all surrounding not so much Vader himself, but how other people react to Vader. And it's probably one of the most interesting things I've ever read. We have this general on a Star Destroyer, and he doesn't fulfill his mission. But it's not a big deal. It wasn't a complete loss, and so he's like, "Fine, I'll try to spin this in a way." And then Vader gets involved, and he goes, "I hope to see this other thing happen." Well, this other thing didn't happen, and so it's just this guy's descent into madness as he tries to do this thing before Vader gets there, or else terrible things are going to happen. I don't want to give too much away. I don't know how many of you guys are going to be into it, but I really loved it. Next, we have issue 3. This one was probably my favorite. It really dives into the whole idea of like when women are attracted to serial killers. It kind of follows this woman into her delusions that her and Vader are going to be together forever. And it has a very satisfying ending. All right, next we have Deceased, and I know Batman is on the cover. It's not actually a Batman title, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it's fantastic. I was a little skeptical about it because it's Marvel Zombies for DC. There's also some continuity issues, but that doesn't bother me as much as it probably bothers some people. It's something to do with Darkseid, so you'll have to read it and find out. But what also got me was this is probably one of the best covers I have ever seen. So obviously it's a reference to It. You have the Joker holding a big red balloon, and then you have, I'm assuming that's Robin. Yeah, it's Robin, and he's got his yellow cape, which is supposed to be, the yellow slicker. Yeah, it's just an amazing, amazing cover, and whoever thought of it, well done. Next, diving into some more old school stuff, East of West. I finally picked one up. This story, you just have to muscle through. It's an interesting concept, but you are dropped into the middle of something and nothing is ever explained. The only thing that keeps you going is the story that you start with, the one that starts at the beginning, because there's like 100 different storylines going. But the story that you start with that follows all the way through is so good that you hold on to all of the other little strings that have been flapping in the wind behind you that you have no idea what they're about. You hold on to those in the hopes that they explain it. And it's gone on for, I don't know how many years. Last I saw on Amazon, I could go up to volume 9. So it's obviously popular enough that you can get it. And it's a Hickman title, so Hickman writes these giant stories anyway. But yeah, it's definitely, I'm looking forward to getting volume 2. And like I said, these, you just kind of have to hold on. You're not going to understand, I'd say, a good 50% of what's going on or why it's going on. But the story itself is so compelling that you probably won't mind and that you'll hang on because you'll probably get it later. All right, next up we have The Flash 68 and 69, and these are building up to this is the very end of this run, and then we start off with The Flash Year 1, which I have upstairs right now waiting to be read. This was a surprisingly good story. It's all about the Trickster, and it's kind of one of those things where he's been working this whole scene. Again, all these things that I thought were not important that were going on because there were other things happening, turns out were very important, and they've got a whole story based on them. So yeah, this was a very satisfying thing. Again, the art's not my favorite. It's just this, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's a very old school style, and I was never a huge fan of like the old school art from comics, and I could be pissing a lot of people off right now, but it's just my preference. But yeah, this again, Williamson is writing such a good story that the art doesn't matter. I can get over that. And it's not like the art's terrible, but just not my cup of tea. But year one, man, that's going to be a good story. I've already heard some buzz about it. I've got I guess it's 70 and 71. I don't know if 72's come out yet. But anyway, I'm super excited to dive into that. Next, we have Gideon Falls. This story was so good that my wife actually got into it. And again, it's one of those stories that I almost need to go back and just plow through all of them at once, because with it coming out every month, the stories are so out there, it's hard to remember what's going on or why this is important. And right now, I don't know what's going on, but they are jumping all over the place. And I thought I had a handle on what's happening, and it turns out who knows. But it's a phenomenal story. The art in it is amazing. I love that I don't know if it's the same guy who did Old Man Logan, but it's kind of just this weird, everything's a little, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. But yeah, it's fantastic. Fantastic. Everybody should read that. Next is my final issue of Green Lantern. I was so upset about this. So very upset. The art just threw me off. The story was too weird for me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't hang in there. I did talk to a lot of people, and they loved it. They liked the whole buddy cop feel that it had to it. I was not a fan. I'm not a huge fan of Morrison to begin with. I think that he writes stories in such a way that it's super hard to follow, that it's whatever's in his brain is spewing out, and it's just a stream of consciousness, and if nobody understands it, well, that's too bad for them. But yeah, it was too much. I don't know. Let me know what you guys thought. I was not into it. Next, we have Heroes in Crisis. This was another very controversial one. Personally, I love it. Again, I don't mind change in my characters. I don't mind if you take a character off this way to explore this. I don't mind you pushing the envelope on that kind of thing. I don't mind those kind of changes. I actually welcome those kind of changes, because you can only tell Superman's story so many times. Somebody's attacking. He punches somebody. This is what happened. Somebody's attacking. He punches them. This is what happens. So whenever you can take a character and build on what somebody else has built, because this is all building off of, whenever Rebirth happened and Wally West came back and nobody remembered him, and he still had all of his memories, and then he starts pulling on, okay, so how does this story not happen with what you've told? I always thought it was weird that for so long he just went and fought with the Titans, and he ran with Barry Allen, and he did all of the Flash stuff. He still didn't have his family. So how do you just go about your life knowing that your family is still out there somehow and that you might be able to get them back? It was always just weird to me why it took him so long to reach this point that we hit in Heroes in Crisis. Again, I haven't read issue 9 yet, but some people, I already know some people were very disappointed. Some people liked it. Some people hated it. There's talk of it just not being in continuity anymore. And I'm telling you, if DC keeps screwing over Tom King, like they ripped him off of Batman, there's rumors that Heroes in Crisis won't be continuity, that you'll just have to ignore it, which means he wrote this story essentially as a what if, so it doesn't mean anything. If they keep screwing with Tom King, I don't see why Tom King is going to put up with it and just stay. So, maybe Marvel gets an awesome writer over at Marvel, or maybe he puts out his own stories and maybe he starts hitting up that indie circuit. I bet Tom King could write the crap out of some good indie stories. So, personally, I loved Heroes in Crisis. Again, I haven't read the last issue yet, but it's been one of my favorite reads. And Tom King is absolutely one of my top 5 writers right now. I absolutely love everything he puts out. He could write on a napkin and I'd read it. Next, we've got Iron Man. And I just read, actually, issue number 11, which was the final conclusion of this story arc. This has been a really good story. It's been amazing. It's all been a very virtual experience. What I love most is, for one, they explain what's been going on with Tony Stark and why he's been acting so weird, and then what happened to him after he had, quote unquote, died and was gone for so long. But also, they're bringing back Arno, and it looks like they're setting up, because there was I believe it was a what if story, and it was also a story in Secret Wars, where they had the Armor Wars. And I'm definitely seeing some callbacks to that. I could be wrong about the what if story. Maybe it actually did happen, but from what I understand, it's not continuity. I don't know. I could be wrong though. But yeah, it looks like they're gearing up for like an Armor Wars. If he's going against Arno, it's not going to be a small little thing. It's going to be an event, and it might be an isolated event within the Iron Man story, but it's going to be something that they really push, because a lot of people have been asking, where's Arno? Why isn't Arno here? I don't know much about him. I know that he is the true biological offspring of, and I say offspring because I could be wrong, but I think they grew him in a test tube. I don't know, but they took Iron Man's mom and dad, adopted mom and dad, put their DNA together, made a baby artificially, and I'm wanting to say that's what it was. I could be wrong though. Again, if I need any corrections, put them in the comments. Next, we have probably the biggest surprise for me, was Justice League Odyssey. This was a group of people that I either didn't know anything about or actively disliked. Cyborg, for one, couldn't stand Cyborg. Cyborg had his own DC Rebirth line, and it was horrific. It was the worst. And it had so much potential, so I hung on for a while. But they always took the most obvious route. They always took the most obvious out that they could, and it was just nothing but football reference after football reference after football reference. So yeah, I had to drop that. But in this story, it's so good because you have, essentially they set this up to be the outcasts, the people that nobody really cares about, that people overlook, the people that aren't as important to the team as everybody else. And they've got their own team going now, and Darkseid's involved, and the fate of the universe is involved. What I'm guessing is going to happen is you have Justice League Dark, and Justice League Odyssey. All three of those are going out on their own separate tangents. So what's going to happen, in my mind, is that they will not continue as their own stories. They're eventually going to finish up whatever it is that they're doing out in their universe. They're going to come back in, and there's going to be an event. And this event will tie them all back in together. It's going to take pieces from each one of those storylines, and that's what I think is going to happen. I could be way off, but I don't see this going on forever. and I don't see the Justice League Dark one going on forever. But yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen. Next is the Punisher for the War of Realms. This was surprisingly good as well. This was one of those tie-ins that I was talking about, but this wasn't one that was mixed into the bunch of stories that they did in Thor or anything like that. I don't know. I never hear anything about the Punisher, so I've never read the Punisher. I know that the Punisher Max is touted as, one of the great stories. But other than that, you never hear anything about it. And so this was phenomenal. And it's really got me interested in reading other Punishers, which I guess is the point of a tie-in. But it's also one that Dugan's writing. So, Dugan's kind of been hit and miss for me here recently. But as far as the Punisher's going, maybe if you don't give him, universal power, then maybe Dugan can write a good story. Usually whenever you give him something like an Infinity Stone, he takes it way crazy. But maybe with Castle, he'll be more grounded, and it'll be a more relatable story. Next, we have Rick and Morty. And, a Rick and Morty story is going to be a Rick and Morty story. There's not a whole lot to say about it. I think I don't necessarily want to stop picking it up because they're good anthologies, but what I might do is just kind of buy them and save them. And then whenever I feel an itch, I just go through and I just start reading Rick and Morty. Because the fact that it's an anthology and it doesn't build on itself and it doesn't really have like a line of continuity, like the Vader ones. The Vader ones, yes, they are anthologies, but there's a line that goes through all of them. With Rick and Morty, not so much. It's just random hijinks that they get into. So yeah, I think that's what I might do. Still pick it up, but just set it aside, and then whenever I feel like Rick and Morty, I'll just grab one of those. Next, we have Spider-Man City at War. These are essentially... This is essentially a walkthrough on the game. I was a little disappointed to see that they're going verbatim from the game. There's a couple of like extra lines of dialogue, but it's pretty much the game. Now, the good thing is they're not following it as slow as the game. They're kind of pushing through. So what I think is going to happen is by issue 6, that will be the tie-up. That'll be the end of the game. And then by issue 7, they're going to start pushing forward with their own stories. I'm hoping. If these are just going to be retellings of the game, I probably won't buy them anymore. I don't see that happening. I think that these comics are going to be setting the tone for the game later on. So the game will follow the comics rather than the comics following the game. But first, you have to get everybody caught up because there might be people out there who read Spider-Man that don't play video games, and so this might get them in. So it's very smart in the marketing sense, get everything tied together and then go forward, and you can sell twice as many things because now this fandom is with this fandom, and now they can come together and enjoy things all at once. Next, we have Action Comics. Again, with Bendis writing this, at first I was more into Superman than I was Action Comics. Now that they're pushing this Leviathan thing, it's really starting to build up, and I've been enjoying Bendis's run. I know I talked a little crap on Bendis earlier, but I really have been enjoying it. And I know a lot of people hated Superman. They hated that the first thing out of the gate, Bendis went and retconned Superman. I don't mind it. I have no emotional connection to Superman. It doesn't bother me. Now, I'm not saying that my opinion should govern how comics are created or how established comic book readers should react. But in my mind, in my opinion, I think it's been great. I've enjoyed it. Again, Action Comics has been a little hit and miss for me. I like the idea of it, that it's more of a Lois and Clark. And that's exactly, if it wasn't Action Comics, that's what it would be called, is Lois and Clark. Because, yes, Superman's there, yes, Superman's involved, but it's more of a team-up between the two of them than it is anything else. And it's really building up to something. Now, I'm really interested in this Leviathan Rising, which if I hadn't have been reading these, I probably wouldn't have cared. But it's got me interested. Like, I'm genuinely trying to figure out who is behind all this. Because you know it's going to be somebody that we know. They wouldn't build up to it like this and say, who is Leviathan, if it was going to be an unknown. So it's going to be somebody that we know. It's going to be a character from the universe. Now, it could be somebody that we all have readily available in our mind. It could be somebody obscure from 50 years ago. Who knows? Next, we have Super Son Adventures, or Adventures of the Super Sons. This story has been amazing as well. I just like the idea of all these little kid versions of these villains. And it's not like they're lightweights. I mean, they're holding their own. And that was my worry. Whenever I first started reading, I was like, it's just a bunch of little kids. They're going to, nothing's going to happen. But they're causing some mayhem. So 2 more issues left. And I'm real excited about it. I'm sad to see it go. But it has been a fun ride. It has been enjoyable. I think this is what DC should jump on for their next animated movie. This would make a phenomenal one. I just love it. Next, we have Thor with the War of Realms. Again, this is more of a not Thor story. The last 3 or 4 of these have been not Thors. And that's what it should say, is not Thor. This one's on Loki. And I don't want to spoil anything, but something happened in the War of Realms that ties into this. This picks up and kind of takes you through that journey with Loki. It's super interesting, super good writing. The art in Thor at first threw me off, but it's really grown on me. It's kind of a muted, psychedelic kind of vibe to it. I really love the exploration of Loki's character in this issue as well. So if you're a Loki fan, not a Thor fan, just pick up this one. Thor, issue number 12 from the War of Realms. It's a very, very good Loki story. Next, we have Walking Dead. This one, it kind of went about halfway through, if that. I kind of knew what was going to happen, but that didn't make it any less satisfying. And it's still a cliffhanger, so I don't know if what happened actually happened or if they wanted you to just think it happened. That's the beauty of The Walking Dead, is that, if something happens to Superman, a rock falls on Superman, and at the end of it, it looks, that's where they end, is the rock laying on top of Superman. In the next issue, he's just going to push the rock off and be like, oh man, that kind of hurt. In The Walking Dead, if something happens to a character and they leave it there, they might have something horrible happen. Maybe what happened to this person actually happened, or maybe what happened to this person didn't happen. So take Glenn, for instance, in the show. Whenever he fell off the dumpster, this is a few seasons back, so don't worry about spoilers. He fell off the dumpster, and we're like, oh my god, I can't believe Glenn got eaten. And then it turns out that he rolled under the dumpster. So it could be something like that, or it could be where they're all sitting in front of Negan and he gets his head bashed in. They're very irreverent with the death of their characters. They try to give them good deaths. They try to give them memorable deaths. But who knows? And that's part of how you keep a story good, is that you might lose anyone at any time. I think Martin, who wrote the Game of Thrones stories, that's how his books are, is, anybody can die. Just because I've been telling this story that spanned 2 books with this guy being the main guy, he'll die. I don't care. It's kind of crazy. Next, we have Wolverine Infinity Watch. Again, this is Dugan. It's not my favorite story. I kind of want to see where it goes. This is more of a buddy cop. And whenever you read it as that, where it's supposed to be kind of a light-hearted adventure, it's not bad. It's good enough to pick up. If they don't do anything with it, then I'll probably end up dropping it after this run. But yeah, it hasn't been terrible. I don't see this going on forever. It's not going to be like Wolverine Infinity Watch issue number 75. It's going to be, this is Wolverine's introduction, which I was really surprised that they kind of went this way with it, especially after the big introduction of, Wolverine's back. We had the hunt for Wolverine. We had, Wolverine actually coming back. That was a great story. I love that. And then they went to this. So it was a little bit of a weird transition for me. But, I don't get to make the plans over at Marvel. Next, we had a pickup from Free Comic Book Day that I finally got around to reading. This is pretty much just a big setup for all 3 events that have been going on. So you have Leviathan, you have the Batman Who Laughs, you have the Legion of Doom. This was much better than I thought. I thought it was going to be little snippets, just like teasers. Nope. These are very important. You should definitely go pick this one up. You should read it. It really gets you excited for what's coming down the pike. It is going to be tremendous. Every story that they mention in here seems like it's going to be awesome. And it also seems like it's going to kind of tie in all of these different things going on. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. But yeah, all right. So you hung in with me. I told you it was going to be a long one. I had a lot of stuff. Did a lot of reading. I'm building up for my my June reading right now. It should be much smaller. Over the summer, it's a little harder for me to get any reading done because I've got so many other things going on. This Thursday, I'm going to be recording another rundown with David Mueller. We're going to hopefully get one step closer to finishing up Vader. I've also got to schedule an appointment to record a video with Jacob Whittington. We're going to cover Spartan's Legacy. It's his machinima that he's been doing, so keep an eye out for that. I just posted a video talking about Legit Arts, so if you hear me talk about Legit Arts and you want to know what that's all about, there's a short video. It's not on a playlist, it's just on there. I just uploaded it today. But yeah, go check all those out. Remember, if you like what I'm putting up, hit the like button. If you like the channel, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit that little gray bell so that you can get notifications. That's all I got. I'll see you guys later.